to Oakville Matters. You've heard me say many times that Oakville enjoys the status of being Canada's safest community, and that's true, but you will also notice that we still have crime. And it always amazes me the number of people who make it easy for crime to happen to them. But today on Oakville Matters, we have 3 experts from the Halton Police Service who will help you understand how you can avoid being a victim. You don't have to attract crime. If you like, you can send it somewhere else. And with us to talk about the ways to do that are Constable Marc Taraso and the Detective Constable Sarah Rudall and Detective Ron Strauch. And if you, when you see his name on the screen, you'll understand why I had to ask him to do it. So thank you and welcome. Ron, you mentioned that our very last break-in was facilitated by the homeowner by what?
I've seen 3 recently, actually, that it's just rear door left open or front door left open when people have left their residences, and it makes it very easy for criminals to get into their house.
It's almost like putting a sign up and saying, you know, help yourself.
For sure, 100%, yeah. It's very easy for them.
So Marc's got a bunch of devices that sort of begin to get at the question of what can you do besides locking the locks you've got, and locking your car doors, for example. There's a few other devices that Marc, you can walk us through.
Yeah, so I picked up a few things here, and everything that I've brought with me here was $80. So it's not very expensive to buy some of the easier gadgets, and some of the best gadgets are free. You don't even have to pay for them.
Those long screws, I use those.
That's right. So if you were to go to your house and take off your hinges, or some of your hinges on your doors, you're most likely going to find some very small screws. These are great for holding the piece of metal to the piece of wood, and that's about it. The problem is that these don't go through the air gap that's between the frame of the door and the actual frame of the wall, and they just end up in an air pocket. With these long 3-inch screws, they're going to go through the lock system, and they're actually going to go into the studs of the wall. And so if somebody tries to kick in that door, which is a common method of entry, you're actually now using the frame of the house to hold that door together. We've noticed, and I've put it to the test myself, when you use these screws, that door is not moving, it's not going anywhere. And you can buy a bucket of these at your hardware store for $10 and do all your doors in your house.
And P.S. you won't need a whole bucket.
No, yeah, no.
You can count the screws in advance and save a penny or two.
That's right. After that, just some added hardware. So when we talk about home entries, bad guys are getting into your house in 2 ways. They're going through glass or they're going through doors. Luckily, we don't have to worry about them going through the siding or the brick of your house, so that's already well defended. In terms of doors, all we want to do is make our door a little bit more secure than the neighbor's door, and that way they're not going to come through your door. So adding something like a nighttime lock to your front door is really helpful. Adding a lock like this, the old chain style lock is not very effective. Those are very easy to break. This lock here is solid metal, and we put it in different places on the door. So you might want to put it high or put it low. And the good thing is if they break a window adjacent to your door, they might know exactly where the deadbolt is near the handle. But if you put a lock like this, either high or low, the bad guys aren't necessarily going to know where to find it, where to reach for it. And again, it's got 3-inch screws included in it. So again, it's going right through into the stud of that house, and that's going to hold the door together. And they have a lock that's very similar just for your sliding patio door. With sliding patio doors, one of the common methods to get in is just to raise the door up. They lift it up off the track and then they can slide it over. With a lock like this, you're preventing it from being lifted up because this is going to engage the top of the frame, and at that point now you can't hoist that door.
And this is more, let me call it, more attractive than the bar across that I use.
Yeah, that's right. It looks a little bit better, it's out of the way, and it's great for children and pets too. Kids now, you know, some of them can reach that lock and get out. With this, you put up at the top of the door, most kids aren't going to be able to reach it. So it's also good just to keep kids in the house.
Good and good.
The bar is the cheap method though. If you want to get a bar, you can go to a lumber store, buy a piece of wood and put that across.
Oh, mine's more fancy than that. It swivels up and out of the way, and I also have a thing to prevent lifting out of the track, but I'm obsessive about these things.
Yeah, you can do the bar or you can do a 2x4. 2x4 works as well, just doesn't look as nice.
Yeah, it's cheaper too.
That's right. Also, when we talk about front doors, one of the common methods that we have when a house is targeted is they'll knock on the door to see if anybody's home. Most of the time, these guys don't want to be at your house if you're home. They want to come when nobody's around. So what they'll do is they'll knock on the door and wait to see that there's no answer, and then they'll kick in the door if they don't get an answer. So one of the things that we might recommend is, as soon as you hear a knock on the door, even if you don't want to answer because you don't know who it is, just shout out and say, "Hi, I'm busy," and they'll go on. They'll leave. If you're not home, there's different gadgets you can get, kind of like a stereo system that works. When it recognizes the doorbell sound, it'll make some sounds, it'll turn on the radio, or it'll have a dog barking. Those are kind of more fancy gadgets you can get, but it just alerts somebody that somebody's home. But what we recommend is never open the door unless you know who's there.
So I don't actually need my dog.
You don't need your dog. You need an electronic dog these days. But know who's there before you open the door. So you can either talk through them through the door, but then again, you still don't know who's there. This peephole, I paid $4 for it. You drill a very small hole through your wood door and you install it. It's very quick and easy, but just a good idea to know who's there before you open the door. You never really want to open that until you know who's there. And then the only other thing I brought today is just security hinges and security strikes for your doors. You can buy security strikes that have 4 or 6 or 8 screws. Obviously, the more 3-inch screws you can put in there, the stronger your door is going to be. So this one's got 4, but you can obviously get them much bigger and stronger.
So I recommend this. I use this.
It is. It's great. And
You can have mayoral security.
That's right.
If you have this.
And the great thing is, if you have a drill, you can install it. So you don't need a handyman to do it. You can do it yourself.
And Sarah, there's another entire layer of abusive people, which is around fraud, where we're basically trying to trick people, or they are anyway. And often it seems to me they're focusing on more vulnerable populations. What can we do there to help people?
Well, Marc's already been talking about the kind of physical kind of victimization where someone actually comes to your house. 2 other very common ways are when people are contacting vulnerable people by telephone and through the internet. So one scam that's been around for a long time is the CRA scam. And so the characteristics of this is that you will receive a call. It may come up on your caller ID as Canada Revenue Agency, makes you think it's a legitimate phone call. And when you pick it up, they're saying things like you're in arrears with your CRA payments. You need to do what we say immediately. And they're often quite aggressive, and they're intimidating people over the phone in that way to make them do what they want them to do. Now, there's various variations on the methods of payment. So when it first started, they were asking people to go to supermarkets and purchase iTunes cards, and then they would then be required to give the code on the back of the card to whoever was on the other end of the phone by way of making their remittance to the CRA. It then moved on to Steam cards, which are gaming cards. I'm not that familiar with them myself, but that's another card that you can buy from a Shoppers or a supermarket. And what they're actually doing now, and viewers might have seen this recently in the news, they're using Bitcoin. So in various, and it's usually convenience stores, we have apparently 4 Bitcoin ATMs located in convenience stores in Halton region. So the CRA will tell you you're in arrears with your taxes, you need to make a payment. You need to go to your bank, you need to withdraw X amount of cash, and then you need to go to this convenience store and feed it into the Bitcoin ATM. So that's a big red flag. The CRA, first of all, doesn't usually communicate by telephone. They usually communicate with you by mail. And so that's your first red flag. And second, they don't require payment by any kind of card or Bitcoin, which is the new trend, as it seems to be. So those are the red flags to be aware of.
I think, in fact, can't we extend it to say anybody who calls you up on the phone and is aggressive about getting money out of you is a scammer, period?
Yeah, and you just hang up. That's the easiest thing to do, end the conversation.
But if you're like my grandmother was a very sweet soul, and she just had this powerful desire to help people, and people preyed on her constantly. It was very hard to run around for my family to run around after her cleaning up those impositions. So Ron, when you're doing the criminal investigations, how do we actually? We have the highest clearance rate. We like to boast. So how are we doing that? How do you get these bad guys?
In all honesty, whenever I've investigated a big file, say a group of people who have maybe done 30 break-and enters in the region, it's usually started off by a tip from the community. Maybe someone in the community may have taken a picture from someone up near a neighbor's residence, or maybe gotten a license plate of a car that really just doesn't fit in their own neighborhood, and that can balloon into a huge investigation without a doubt. So we definitely need the community, but we're liaising with other neighboring police services as well, constant communication with their analyst to sort of see the crime trends that might be coming into Oakville. And because when I specifically investigate break-and enters, it seems very organized. There's some very organized groups out there right now. And they're usually not from within Halton, so it takes a lot of communication with other neighboring police services to help get tips and to see who may be coming into Halton and committing these crimes.
There was a story in the Star following the publication of the 2016 census that pointed out how rich Halton is compared to the rest of the GTHA, and so it stands to reason that surely it's perfectly logical that criminally minded folks would see that as a target, and they'd think it was worth the drive to Halton.
100%. We have some very nice communities in Halton, and criminals recognize that for sure.
But I mean, really, you make the point that we can have as good a community as we're willing to work together to create, and it starts with know your neighbor, and if you see something, say something, and that's what we're here for. So when we do we still have Nigerian prince scams on the internet?
Oh yeah, there's lots of classic scams. Something that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention today is how you have to be so careful about clicking on links in emails, and often what they're trying to do, that's the whole point of calling it a phishing scam, they're phishing for your personal information. So if you're sent an email, maybe you bank with BMO and you get an email from BMO and they want you to confirm or provide or update your personal information with them, and they provide you with a link. Just think twice about clicking on that link. And a good way of checking that this is actually an email from your bank is either just shut everything down and call them yourself.
Yes.
Or go to the bar at the top of the screen and just hover over the URL, and that's the web address. And then often you will see it's very clear that it's not a legitimate email from your bank, it's from somebody else. So just think twice.
My stance on that is if my bank wants to talk to me, they know my phone number.
Right.
And I mean, you know your bank, and you know the person that you deal with at your bank. And the whole point about a good bank is that personal relationship. I get emails from every bank in the world because this bank scam is really huge. And it's very funny to read a very stern notice from a bank I've never done business with that unless I click here, I'm going to lose my account. And I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a bank that will talk to you about anything important by email. You should use the phone, or better yet, be in person. The best part of life is dealing with other human beings face to face. I know it's maybe not as fast as email sounds, but by the time after you fall for an email and the trouble and the tar baby of difficulty that will tie you up in, going and talking to the people in person would have been faster. So let's hear it for human contact.
And the bank tellers are also all trained in fraud prevention. The banks stand to lose a lot of money with these frauds, and so they invest a lot of money into training. So if you go into the bank, it's very easy. They're right next door to your house, most likely. You can go talk to them and say, this is what somebody called me about. Is this legitimate? And they will most likely talk you out of it and explain to you the proper channels.
Yeah, there's another angle. Everybody's heard of the expression, use it or lose it. If you're not going to your branch, what do you think the chances are that the branch will stay open? And ultimately, that's your best protection, is to have to have that relationship at the local branch. What else is hot these days in efforts to exploit our population?
There's a fairly new scam called the subscription scam. So we get a lot of people go online these days, and so these things called subscription scams are popping up. So you might see, it could be an advertisement for anything you might want to try a sample of. But one example I've seen lately is a face cream scam. So it comes up, we can provide you with a free sample. All you have to do is pay the shipping. So of course the people will pay for the shipping with their credit card, and really it's just a scam to get credit cards. Somewhere down in the fine print it will say within 14 days you have to A, return the sample, and B, cancel your subscription. People aren't seeing the fine print, of course. They assume it's just a free sample and there's no other commitment. But so they're not canceling their subscriptions, and then they're getting billed on their credit card for 2, 3, 4 more products. And what we're finding is that the credit card companies aren't refunding these transactions because they say you should have read the fine print. So you have to be very, very careful. Whatever, if it represents itself as a free sample, it probably isn't. And it's big business, and these people are operating from outside of Canada.
I may cancel the internet.
Yeah.
So, Marc, what else are you seeing?
Well, the biggest thing I think right now that we've had is, as Ron mentioned, is people going in through unlocked doors. The other thing that we've seen is guys breaking windows. In Oakville, like you mentioned, we're a very target-rich environment, and we have some luxurious houses that have nice big windows for people to go in through. And all it usually takes is one hit with a baseball bat or crowbar, and in they go. Because we're target-rich, we also need to target harden, and because we have a community that has that is a little bit more wealthy, they can afford some of the more target hardening measures that are out there that maybe are a little bit more expensive but are worth it to protect your investment. So with a window, everybody thinks, well, what are we going to do with a window? We don't want to put bars on our windows, and I don't think anybody would want to see that. And I think there's probably bylaws against that too.
But you do have a really fabulous solution for this.
We do, and it's invisible, which is the great thing. So if you contact your local window supplier or a security company, they sell a product. It's a window security film, and there's a couple different manufacturers, and there's the benefits and pros and cons of different types. But it's basically a clear layer of plastic that goes over top of your window. Some will tell you on the inside, or some will tell you on the outside. But they install over the window, and once it's on, it's perfectly clear. You don't see any edges because they put it behind the frame, and it becomes hard as rock once it's on and it's cured. We've trialed it ourselves. We've had it installed on a bay window, a plate glass window, and a front door that had an inlaid glass. And I hit it with a metal baseball bat, and it took me, I think, probably about 20 to 30 hits to just puncture the plastic layer. The window will shatter, but the plastic stays intact, and it just starts to tear. And so by the time that you're able to get through that, the entire neighborhood would be aware that somebody's breaking windows. And these guys are not hanging around that long. If they don't get in on the first or second try, they're leaving. They don't want to be around when the cops show up. So it is a little bit of a pricier investment, but it lasts forever. As long as the window's going to last, this product will last. And again, it provides some alternate security methods as well. Like if a kid breaks the window, that glass is staying together, and it's not going to disintegrate into a million pieces.
I would say it's cheaper than a break-in.
Absolutely, 100%. They talk about it in cost per square foot, and it's dollars. So it depends how many windows you have, but it's not hundreds of dollars per square foot. The other thing would be alarm systems. Now, again, there's pros and cons to different types of alarm systems, but one of the best benefits of the alarm system is alerting your neighbors. So if that audible alarm goes off and it's very loud, you're alerting your neighbors. If you have that neighbor that's retired, that's always home, they may look outside when they hear that audible alarm, and like Ron mentioned, they might see a vehicle description or a license plate or a person description, which just gives us that starting point. Some bad guys will still go in and still burglarize that house even if the alarm's going off. But again, you're just letting your neighbors know that something's going on, and that alarm company will get called and they'll call us.
And on that note, Marc, we've seen some, it'd be preferable if you had like a cellular-based alarm system, because we've seen older wired system or wireless. If you disable the internet connection in that home, and from time to time we do see people ripping out wires and stuff like that from alarm systems, it'll deactivate it. But if you have a cellular-based system, it's like a text message. It'll send a message to your monitoring station, who will contact us, and our response will be a lot quicker.
So it's sort of two-level. You want the audible sound to alert the neighbors, and you want the ability to not be defeated by wire so that the message gets through. How do you feel about cameras, home cameras that I guess you'd mount them somewhere where they were hard to interfere with, and they'd give different views, inside or outside. I know we've had a couple of cases where we've solved break-ins because neighbors had cameras that caught the people going in, because in one case a camera looked across the street and saw something. What's your best advice about cameras? Inside, outside, both, either?
As many as possible, but I understand cost is an issue. We actually have a program with Halton Police called Project Scram, security camera registration and monitoring. We can register on our website with Halton Police that you have a camera. And it might not be your home, it might be your neighbor's home, as you said. And cameras can point out to the roadway. It's a public area, and that's how we also solve crime. But with important cameras, usually we get cameras that are up high, right? And we get a lot of video of tops of heads and stuff like that. So there's the sort of, you're wrestling with, is that camera going to get damaged or stolen? But down more eye level, if somehow you can conceal it possibly, would be more beneficial. Obviously, to get someone's face is better than the top of their heads. And also with surveillance footage, we see some very high-end homes, and they have poor surveillance cameras. The footage isn't very good, it's grainy and stuff like that. So when you're buying a system, and I think they've come down where you can get them $300 to $500, decent sort of camera systems.
Oh yeah, I was in an electronics store the other day, and it was so cheap, I was tempted.
Yeah, just make sure you research the quality of the video. If you can get 1080p for an affordable price, that's what will go on. You have a luxurious home and then you have inadequate sort of surveillance cameras, it's sort of defeating the purpose there. So.
If you have a fixed budget for camera, they say one good camera is better than 3 bad cameras. Like just invest in the really one good one that's placed well, and you'll get more bang for your buck that way.
I called on somebody the other day, and they had like a doorbell intercom thing that had a little lens on it. And I presume they were eyeballing me before they answered the door.
Yeah, 100%. We get that. There's doorbell cameras, and there'll be a feed will go to the person's cell phone when they're not home. And we've seen some from time to time where there's a guy at my door right now, and that's an excellent sort of view. It's usually right at eye level, and that's very beneficial for us for identifying people.
So the Brits are famous for having cameras everywhere in public. This would be a hybrid, but maybe we could have cameras. Every home could have their own, and the net result would be similar. It'd be kind of a community-based crime prevention effort.
Oh, for sure. And that might not deter all. Nothing's 100%. Would be definitely deter some criminals if they see that they're under surveillance.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're thrilled and happy that you guys are so good that we're the safest. And I really believe, I preach this everywhere I go, that there's always room to be safer, and we can only get there by working together, i.e. the homeowner, the resident, needs to play their part. And leaving the car door open is probably a really bad way to contribute to community safety. Leaving the door unlocked is probably not making your contribution to keeping the community safe. Yeah. In the scam area, we also have these door-to-door characters. Actually, I haven't heard as many stories about door-to-door in the last year or so, but up until about a year ago, I had a constant stream of complaints about door-to-door folks. I'll call it strong talking their way into the house with one crazy claim or another about how they had to check your furnace and this kind of stuff, or your air conditioner or whatever. What's the story there now?
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard so much recently. As you say, I know that last year there was. I know that one of the senior investigators in Burlington just made an arrest, actually, of somebody who was going door to door and representing himself as a handyman, particular to seniors. And I think he was responsible just on his own for quite a lot of the fraudulent behavior that was happening in terms of going door to door in Halton region and in Burlington specifically, I would imagine. But I don't know if you guys have heard too much about that. But
we used to see we used to see it a lot, but I think the government may have implemented some sort of legislation to protect homeowners from that sort of victimization. I think there's like waiting periods now before a contract is put into place and stuff like that. So there's a little more protection out there.
That's right. The Ontario government brought in a law that introduced some regulation to door-to-door sales, and it does seem to have temporarily, at least, dried it up. In my long life, what I've seen is the criminal element is when it's knocked back on its heels, they then invent something new, right? So that's not to say we shouldn't constantly press, it's just that we have to never relax our vigilance. In fact, I think vigilance is the #1 part of safety. So what else have you got there, Ron?
I have there's about 3 programs here that I want to highlight, and you can find all this information on our website, haltonpolice.ca, and there's a lot of crime prevention tips as well. But as you said earlier, Know Your Neighbors is one of the projects we run, and we have different cards, and it's just know people in your community and certain things like just first names of people, and even simple, like people won't know their next door neighbor's sort of home address and stuff like that. So if you see a crime in progress, you're trying to report something, and well, what's the address? And I don't know, and it's two doors down, right? So just a little more awareness in your community and knowing first names. And holiday season coming up, people might go snowbirds, if you will, might go down south. So if you have a trusted neighbor to collect sort of any deliveries for you, to keep an eye out on your residents, just cars that don't belong there, people that don't usually belong there, is a great way to prevent crime as well. We also have a project called Project Safeguard, and I have an audit sheet here, and it's a whole bunch of check boxes, a lot of the stuff that Marc talked about, and it's available through our website, and you can contact our auxiliary police, and we will have someone come out and do an hour assessment on your home and fill this audit sheet out, just how you can better sort of safe-proof your home against break-in enters. So we have that program as well.
And if you see something in your neighborhood that doesn't feel right, do you mind being called? You don't mind being called, do you?
No, not at
So
all.
should they call 911 or should they call the main number?
If they see a crime in progress, if you see someone
911.
911, 100%. But we do have a general line, our 905-825-4747 line with an operator. You can call that line as well to our communications. If it's just something suspicious in your neighborhood that a guy's been going up to doors, no one's really broke in or nothing. But yeah, call our sort of non-emergency line for that. But by all means, call. Like I said earlier, the smallest sort of thing can blow up an investigation and really help us out.
Or Crime Stoppers.
Yeah, 100%.
1-800-222 tips, and they can stay anonymous.
Yeah, so, but the point is that we can always be safer, and the police are happy to hear from you. They don't resent you. I mean, I know you might hesitate to call, because what if it's innocent? Well, that's what they're there for, is to help you find out if it's innocent or not. It's been great having you here. It's the tips that we put out should help everybody be safer, and I thank you each for the job that you do, and all of your colleagues as well. And of course, as your chair, it's an extra level of thanks. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Oakville Matters.